They're throwing him to the wolves. An unlikely voice of support for the embattled former mayor of Johannesburg, Kabelo Gwamanda, comes from Dr. Mpho Phalatse, the woman who was forced to make way, firstly for Thapelo Ahmad and eventually Gwamanda. Why now, she's asking. The warrant of arrest for Gwamanda was issued in May when he was still mayor. He remained free and wearing the mayoral chains. So what's changed, asks Dr. Mpho Phalatse. She was one of the first voices to raise the alarm about alleged fraud in connection with a failed investment scheme and funeral insurance company Gwamanda ran all the way back in 2012 and 2011. The former executive mayor of the city of Joburg, Dr. Phalatse, joins us now on the line. A pleasure to have you back on the show. Thank you for your time.
Good morning, Bongani. Good morning to your listeners as well.
You had, as the cool kids say today, the receipts from the beginning.
Yes, I did get quite involved in this matter. I was then still serving in council. I was DA caucus leader. And we were tipped off through a voice note on WhatsApp. We did have an activist in the area where most of the victims live, and she reached out to me for assistance. I went out and I met with those victims. They showed me all the documentation. I could see the proof that indeed they had invested money in the scheme, and I also had my doubts that it was actually a legal operation. So I assisted them to approach the local police station to actually open a case.
To be clear, you're no fan of Gwamanda.
No, not at all. I'm not.
So what did his alleged victims claim?
Well, they claimed that he ran this funeral policy and investment scheme. They claimed that over years they had been putting money into this entity, and that when they were supposed to draw money from the entity, he told them that his company had been liquidated. So effectively he ran away with the money. They also told me that he had attempted suicide, himself and his co-director, and that they were rushed to hospital and survived there, allegedly having taken organophosphate poisoning. There were some people that actually believed the liquidation stories, but the majority of the people I met with did not believe it.
At some point, of course, you were encouraging those who had claims to go to the Protea North police station to lay a charge. And I understand the warrant for his arrest has been out since May?
And yeah, that's true. In fact, I actually picked them up and took them to the police station to assist them and make sure that they are supported by the SAPs. As we know, there can be all sorts of challenges with laying charges as well. But what's surprising to me is a few things. One is how everybody's acting surprised. The ANC, including every other political party that actually supported his election. When we raised this alarm, none of them met with any of the victims to try and establish facts. Now they're acting as though they did not know. There was enough evidence for them to question his election as mayor, and entrusting such a huge budget and such a huge responsibility to somebody with such a questionable past. So I do think they should be held accountable as well, and they cannot claim that they did not know. So that is the first thing I'm questioning. The second thing is, yes, his warrant of arrest was issued, I believe, in May already. That's 5 months ago. This person was in public office. He was still serving as mayor at the time. He has subsequently started serving as MMC. This is somebody who could have been traceable with relative ease. Why is it that it took so long for his arrest? In fact, I believe he handed himself to the police. Why is it that the police could not apprehend him? We need to ask these questions. It does look like there was political interference, a conflation of the politics and what should have been allowed to flow in the criminal justice system, and that needs to be looked into.
I mean, the ANC said they had vetted him. The allegations against him at the time were rumor mongering, they said. What does all of this tell you, or should tell us, about the ANC EFF Al Jamaa coalition?
Well, Bongani, firstly, I saw an interview by Premier Panyaza Lesufi where he says he was not vetted. He says they only vetted Thapelo Ahmad, who succeeded me as mayor, and that when Kabelo Gwamanda succeeded Thapelo Ahmad, no vetting processes were embarked upon. Now, that was very irresponsible of these political parties to place someone in such a position without proper vetting processes. And they ought to apologize to the public, particularly the residents of Johannesburg.
That depends on whether you believe the Premier or not, because other ANC spokespeople have said all along that he was vetted. I mean, there was that interview on Carte Blanche, for example, when it emerged he didn't even have a matric certificate. How particularly galling for you was it to be replaced by people who were so compromised, so underqualified?
Well, that's the nature of politics, unfortunately, in this country, is that the standards are so low that anybody can step into a position of power and authority, be trusted with huge budgets and huge decisions. Johannesburg being the economic hub, you really need to exercise due diligence in appointing people to a position such as the mayor's position. So it is quite disheartening to know that somebody with such a questionable past, with no qualifications, can actually be appointed mayor.
His party are arguing this is all about the renaming of Santon Drive. That's why they're going after him, they argue.
Well, no, I don't believe that that's an issue. In fact, one of the DA councillors is driving a petition. I believe the DA caucus is driving for a petition to be signed for this renaming to be stopped. He was leading the renaming process. There's questionable processes involved. There's paperwork with no clear information as to who signed and so on. So there is really a cause for concern there, and I think they're right. I think this process needs to be looked into, but I don't think that it's the only issue. Gwamanda was not qualified to be mayor, for starters. Gwamanda had a questionable past. He had a case to answer through the law enforcement, and that needed to happen before he could be trusted with such a big role.
You're no longer a councillor in the city. Would you want your old job back?
No, I'm no longer a councillor. I've moved away from politics at the moment. If I do come back to politics, I will announce my return.
Your party didn't back you as strongly as they seem to have done Celia Brink in Tshwane. Did that sting?
Well, look, you know what? It's relative. There was support. I would be lying if I said there was no support.
Not nearly as much as we saw for Celia Brink.
What indicators are we using to measure the amount of support? I mean, we went to court. I was reinstated, if you recall, in September 2022. I was reinstated as mayor after 25 days where Dada Morero was trying to be mayor. And that case was funded by the Democratic Alliance. We had a whole campaign backed up by the Democratic Alliance. So there was a lot of support. I don't necessarily agree with the sentiment that I was not supported. And yeah, people are welcome to have their own opinions. I've moved on. I have no sour grapes. I did what I could at the time. I served to the best of my ability. And should I return, I will return and I will continue to serve.
You back focusing on being a medical doctor right now?
Yes, absolutely.
Would you still want the DA top job if it was an offer?
Well, should I return to politics? I think that it would be a good idea because I did learn through the experience that the politics in the party and governance issues do interface and that you do need to be actively involved in decision-making within the party if you were to succeed in government. So definitely, I do think that would be the winning formula.
What do they say, Dr. Phalatse? We're watching this space.
Thank you, Bongani.
See you somewhere. Dr. Mpho Phalatse, the former executive mayor of the city of Johannesburg.
Current events, developing stories,
tough questions.
Your voice making a difference.
This is Breakfast with Bongani Bingwa.